guess I should get out this too also, so I can see what people are talking about here. Howdy, folks. Thought I would grab this so I can actually see the comments as they come through here. I think it's a little easier on my computer. Howdy. Good to be back with more dadvice. Somebody put in the comments the other day. I thought that was pretty cool. So dad advice is what we're going to be doing again today, and as yesterday and the day before that. Anything I say is just an opinion, and you should take opinions lightly. Obviously, gather many and make your own decisions. So that's the most important dad advice I can offer. Let me see if we had anything left over from yesterday that I can kind of talk to today. Obviously, if you have any questions, throw them out there, and I will try to speak to them as well. Had some good questions yesterday, I thought. And I hope everyone's having a great day so far, or had a great day doing whatever they're doing, and is ready for a great night. So let's see what we got. Here's yesterday's comments. All right, let's see what we got here. I have some questions at the end here. How do you buy a house? Talk about buying a house. Sure, why not? So how do you buy a house? I think the first thing you have to figure out is where you want to be, location-wise. And the second thing you got to figure out is your budget. It's actually kind of a broad question to kind of talk to, isn't it? It's actually too broad of a question. So, you guys got anything for me here? I see some comments came in, so let me see if I can work with a new question instead of an old one. How am I? I'm awesome. Thank you. I'm really great today. And it's pretty good. I'm happy about that. It's always nice to be happy, nice to be in a place of personal comfort. And I hope that for each of you too, right? I mean, I think as a dad, that's what we want for our kids, is that we want them to be happy. That's really all we want for our kids. I'm obviously pleased that I can, be happy for myself as well. And thank you for asking me. Appreciate that. Let's see. It's kind of like, how to identify a scam. Sure. Okay. So I will say, look, the first thing I would say is that there are a lot of scams out there, right? The cliche, if it seems too good to be true, it probably isn't. So let's talk about more, maybe instead of how to identify, maybe some techniques, some things that people do that will pull us in, right? So, and I've known a lot of people who've been scammed. I've been scammed myself. It's part of life is, trying to protect yourself, right? But at the same time, we have to live, and we have to find that degree of freedom that allows for living, without being anxious of the world. So I would say the main things I've noticed with financial scams, right? Because that's what we'll talk to, is like financial scams. The main things I've noticed are that they're going to draw you in psychologically, right? That's how, a lot of these scams will work. And we're not talking about like phishing or like email scams. I'm just talking about where you might have an opportunity that's presented to you, and you're like, hey, you know what? I could make a lot of money here. So the first thought is, and really, maybe let's just make it more broad, like always, instead of just talking about how to identify a scam, but kind of take it to a broader perspective of, how to not be fooled, how not to be cheated. So, so the first thing, like we said, if it seems too good to be true, it probably isn't. And and it's the same idea. You can't get something for nothing, right? That there's value in the world. Value has a value. And so if someone's undervaluing something, you have to ask the question. You can't fool yourself, right? There's a natural bias of fooling yourself into saying, hey, this is my opportunity, especially if you're under financial pressure, right? And there's a little stress there. So there's an additional pressure on you to almost fool yourself into following it. So that'd be the first thing I would say is if it sounds too good to be true, just take a step back and say, wait a second, what's really going on here? Post online. There's some good places on Reddit I've seen where people talk about, they'll post and say, I think it's a scam. It sounds like a scam. And sure enough, it's a scam. Like, people that are cashing scams, which, I'm sure you guys have heard of where, people get you to cash a check and then you're out the money. The other thing I would say is there's a lot of pressure from the other party, right? That's also a good kind of indication of scamminess, right? Because, and that can be anything like, hey, act now, right? So anytime they're trying to put that emotional pressure that if you don't do it now, you're going to miss out on the opportunity. It's because they know it works. It's a good psychological trick to get people to take action. So those would be the main two things. And then the other thing is just know if you're in a place that you could get scammed, right? So especially if, like I was talking about before, is when there's a little desperation there, financial desperation, just understanding that you have more of a propensity at that time to put yourself in a situation that's not going to be to your benefit. So those are just some initial things that come to mind. And then it's not a bad idea to be aware of some of the scams that are out there right now. I mean, there's some pretty popular scams, you could say, right? So around, we talked about the cash checking scam, cashing scam, as well as, buying gift cards and some of these things. So make yourself aware of some of the general scams that are out there because they're kind of trendy, right? This is the scam of the year. Avail yourself to that information to help prevent that. So, okay. So let's go on to Applebee's Fangirl. Hi, I'm non-binary, which means I'm not a boy or a girl. I know it's kind of weird. No, it's not kind of weird. Whatever you feel is right. That's how these things go. So, we can talk about that a little bit, actually. How do I tell my dad without him getting upset with me? All right, so let's talk about what's weird, and I'm going to take it away from the non-binary kind of conversation, but I want to talk about in general because we all think we're weird, right? That's the reality, and that's something that societally and socially kind of get stuck in our head sometime, right? That we think we're different. And I just want everybody to know that we all think that. And we all think that about different things. But, then that means if we're all weird, that nobody's weird. And so and if there's a voice in you saying, hey, I'm weird, you got to pull that out because it's a false voice. I just think that's just a key thing to always remember, is that you're not weird. None of us are weird. And we just have to own who we are, and that's part of a process. But let's talk about how to, talk to your dad. And I think we talked a little bit about this the other day also, right? How do I say this? If he gets upset with you, it's his thing. Okay, so that's the first thing to keep in mind, right? That when someone gets upset at us, let's look at it again broadly, it's a reflection of where they are, right? So it's not, and I'll give you an example, right? So, just like, you could come and tell me you're non-binary and it's not going to be a thing for me, right? So he has some connection to something else that means it's a thing for him. And that could be, whatever the lack of comfort that he might have around that is. So that's just the first thing to keep in mind is that, he's not going to be necessarily, yes, you're the catalyst for his perhaps being upset if he becomes upset, But really, the reason he's upset is because he's been programmed to be upset. He's programmed himself, society's programmed him, his parents have programmed him. That's right. Those are the things, that's how we work. That's how it is. So don't take it personally. And that's where I was trying to get with this, is that, no matter his reaction, it's not, it's a reflection on him, not a reflection on you. So don't take it personally. And like I always tell people, if you have the opportunity, when I get questions like this, I'm like, well, if you're worried about your dad, have you talked to your mom, so, and then the question is, are there, first of all, I think there's a lot of non-binary resources out there on the internet. And you can find comfort in that community as well. There's a community for all of us, no matter what we are, what we believe. That's the cool thing about the world, is there's 7 billion people. And so there's a community for each one of us to find in that 7 billion people, right? And it might not be easy to find that group, but they're out there. And make sure that we can create our own family, chosen family, as well. So I know I don't really feel that I fully answered your question, because there's just not a lot of detail there that I can really grab onto. But hopefully those are some thoughtful and good ideas that can help your thought process. Let's see what we got here. Is the Pope behind me? No, that is just some random dude, menacing, dude. And, it's interesting, I'll tell you. So I have a lot of art back there, and it's really interesting. So I got him when I got divorced about 9 years ago or so. And, I left my house and I moved into a new house, and I needed to buy, all new furniture. And I just kind of left my house behind basically, and kind of left with my clothes. So, and it's interesting. So I ended up buying a lot of art. I like art. And most of the art is really depressing. It's very serious and depressing. And I realized recently I've been kind of getting rid of a lot of my old art just because it is so serious and depressing. But the realization, which was kind of interesting to me, was that really I was just buying pictures that reflected where I was at the time, right? I was in a depressed place. And so, I wanted to, my environment to reflect where I was. And now that, I'm in a happier place, I'm buying much, lighter pictures and that, bring me up. And I think that's just an important thing to always kind of keep in mind, is that, it's almost, there's this external projection that we do. And then, and in a way, right, all this negative imagery that was around me probably, kept bringing me down at the time. Right. So what's going on in your environment if you're in a bad place that's bringing you down? Right. And, and can you change that and say, hey, wait a second, that might not be the healthiest thing for me. Let's bring some prettier things into our life that help, pull us up and get us where we want to go. So, okay, cool. So we got here. I didn't grow up with a dad, but what kind of dating advice would you give to your daughter? Obviously I think it's going to depend on the age, right? So dating advice would be very different for a 16-year-old versus a 20-year-old versus a 30-year-old, just because we're at different places in our life. And so advice in general is going to be pretty varied, as well as, so that's the kind of the first thing to think about, is that, age is absolutely the impactful kind of thing. But the most important thing I would say to my daughter, I want to kind of take a minute and think, what's the advice I'd want to give my daughter, or my daughter, if she decides to ever, turn on these videos and see for herself, would be, what would it be? Advice for my daughter. Find someone who really knows how to give. Find someone who wants to give to her and treat her well. I think that would be the most important thing. Relationships are so complicated, and there are so many things that are important. And many of them are subtle things. But I think at the essence, it's a kind person. Make sure that you're with a kind person, and who's kind to others and is awesome to her. That's what I'd want. Okay, let's see what else we got here. When do you know you picked the right education/career path? By the way, I'll throw something out there before I answer this. I had this idea, which is kind of crazy, but I like crazy ideas. I think crazy ideas are fun. I have a phone next to me. If somebody wanted to call, right, and we have to figure out the troll kind of situation, but if someone wanted to call and have a conversation, I'd be open to that. So if that sounds kind of cool, throw it there in the comments and we can think about it. I can post that number. It's just a SIP number I got, and I can get rid of it just as easily. So, I was like, that could be kind of an interesting thing to have a real conversation play out. So think about that. We'll come back to it later. I'll look at the comments, see what people said. When do you know you picked the right education career path? It's a hard one because it's kind of chicken and egg, isn't it? You don't know what you want to do until you're educated, and then once you're educated, it's too late to really do what you might want to do. I think the first thing, I've always told my kids is that, in high school, I've really encouraged them to get summer jobs, and to really get various summer jobs. And, I know my son, had one summer where he worked 4 or 5 different summer jobs, just to kind of line them up in different environments, for a week or two at a time. And that's not something you can necessarily do for yourself, at a young age like that. But I think that's the most important thing is even when you're in college, even if you can just find people and just say, hey, look, I'll come and work for you for 2 weeks for free. I just need an internship so I can figure out, is this really something I enjoy and something I want to spend literally the rest of my life doing? So that's something I just kind of highly recommend, to try to have that opportunity to test drive, right, what your career is going to do and what you're going to be spending your day doing. It's also, so that's, so I think it's one of those things that most people, honestly, I don't know a lot of people who really enjoyed their career, their entire career. I think that's a pretty lucky person that really, falls into something, that was really aligned with who they are and is really fulfilling. And that's why I think it's important that we have, kind of broad hobbies that allow us to bring some of these things in. And just some other things that kind of come into play is, right, how important is money to you, right? So money is important to some people. It's less important to others. But if money is important, then you might have to sacrifice doing what you want to do. How important is time to you, right? Time to yourself. So, different careers will end up with different time commitments. So really having that perspective up front of, what do you enjoy doing? And what are you good at? That's the other thing. I think, so much, what's easy for me is hard for you. What's easy for you is hard for me. So really knowing what we can find flow in and what's easy and what we enjoy, and finding joy in our job. I mean, that's the goal. That needs to be the goal. And then the question is can you make an effective living doing that? And you get to decide what effective living means for you, right? But I think when you picked it, right? So, how do you know? You know it because you feel it. You just feel aligned, right? When you feel aligned in this world in all ways, right? That's when you know that, that alignment. And you can feel it internally, right? There's this, your mission, your personal desires, everything is pointing in one positive direction. That's when you're going in the right path. And that's not just about career, but that's just like life. And that's always the goal, is to try to get to that point, to get that point. And you can do it. You can do it. It takes work, but you can definitely do it. All right. So we got here. Hi, Dad. I got a girl that I'm really into. I think about her all the time, but she doesn't want to do anything unless we're in a serious relationship, and I don't want to jump to anything serious. What should I do? So I don't know what doing anything means. So, right, know what that means. But I'm going to assume that means she doesn't want to be physical unless you're in a serious relationship. Just if you're really into her, spend time with her. I mean, that's my general take is if you're into somebody, spend time with them. I mean, that's what you want. That you're thinking about her anyway, so you might as well spend that time with her, right? So, yeah. So, and again, if you want, hey, Buddha Gym 5, feel free to clarify exactly what you're asking there, and I'm happy to, to speak to something else. All right, let's see what else we got. How do you parent a kid you don't like very much? I assume it means a step parent. Hopefully it's not just your own kid. That would be kind of harsh. It'd be a hard place to be. I mean, if I kind of, if that was my kid and I didn't like him very much, that'd be pretty tough. But I think, let's just talk from a step kid perspective, which I think is more likely the case of the question. And if it's not, we can talk about how well, actually, I'd take a step back. I don't like my kids all the time, right? I haven't liked my kids all the time. Let's be honest, right? My kids haven't liked me all the time, right? And if I'm honest, there have been times when I'm just kind of, not liking them. I mean, it hasn't been a lot of times, but I'm sure for each of them once or twice that I was kind of like, this isn't working. Now the love was still there, right? But the liking was a little bit shaky, and just typically because it was hard for me and, I wasn't enjoying the work. So, I think it's more challenging if it's not your kid because you don't have that natural love there. That's more of a challenge and how to parent a step kid. And I've, haven't had really a step kid. I've had relationships where there've been kids in my life that aren't mine, and but I've always liked them. So I'm not sure what I would do if I really didn't like them. I think I would ask the question of because kids are pretty perceptive, right? They know the deal. They know how you're really feeling, and part of what I try to figure out is is there something in the relationship with the kid that you can improve. So, and typically that's just about asking them questions and spending time with them. That's all any kid wants is attention, right? So give the kid attention and see if the relationship changes. That would probably be my advice for anybody, that was, and you might come to like the kid a little bit also the more time you spend with them, right? So you're not just seeing the negatives, but you're seeing some of the positives. So that'd be my general advice. How do you parent a kid you don't like very much? The honest truth is that you spend time with them. Don't parent them, just spend time with them, hang out with them, and do stuff that they enjoy. And I think that'll improve the relationship, typically, in my experience. Okay. So what else we got here? Got some thumbs ups and stuff. Thank you. Which state are you from? I'm from Georgia. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. PV Sparky. Hi. What kind of beer is best? Best advice from a dad I could get. So there was a time that I would be happy to give some really solid beer recommendations, but as the dad bod developed, beer kind of had to leave the menu a bit and move to bourbons and other harder liquors. But honestly, I think something with some sophistication, a little complexity, is going to be. There's no best beer. The truth is it depends on what you're eating, and then that's going to define or what you're doing, right? There's a beer for every situation and a beer for every food. So it's like you got to pair it up, right? So, there's a lake chair somewhere, a chair on a lake where a Budweiser is the right play. And that's about the only time a Budweiser is the right play for me. Otherwise, it's going to be something a lot more sophisticated. But there's nothing else that's better than if I'm lakeside. So, all right. Hello to A. Rojas. Why did I get divorced? I think the reason, let's take it, instead of about making about me, let's talk about in general. Why do people break up? Why do relationships end? And I think the answer is that people change. And this is, the key relationship advice here is that if you want to stay in a relationship, you have to change with the person you're in relationship with. Or else you part ways just naturally. So, and again, I don't know, in general, I'm always like talking to like a 22-year-old, but the general relationship advice I'd say is, that if things are good, it's time to be doing some work and even to have a therapist every once in a while to, kind of talk things through because, as we all know, we're far from perfect individuals. And, the upshot of that is that there's stuff that we're not seeing that's going on underneath the relationship. And we don't want those things to get away from us if we really do want like a longer term relationship. And I'd also say that at the end of the day, it takes two parties to decide to be in a relationship. So if one person decides to check out, that's a choice they have. And you can't really control that. You can't control what the other party will do. So that's just part of the unknown of a relationship. And, frankly, hopefully you don't want to control the other party. You want a person that has free will and can do their thing. So, yeah. Who do I turn to for advice? It's a good question. It kind of depends on what kind of advice we're looking for. If it's like relationship advice, typically I'm going to people that know me well and have heard me talk about the relationship in the past. And importantly, can listen and give me some advice without encouraging the outcome. So I would say that's the first thing is that people that I know that aren't just going to be like, throwing something out there that might bias me, but they know how to listen. I have a therapist that I go to for not really advice. I try not to get advice from a therapist so much at this point in the game. It's more about, because the thing I do know is that I've learned for myself is that I have to give myself advice. And I don't necessarily like to, I like to get opinions and thoughts, but then redact it and make my own decision. Because I've learned that only I can fully understand the issue. And I think this is an important thing, is that nobody else can understand your perspective, right? Except for you. We like to think other people can, but the reality is, what I found at least, is that they can understand aspects of things, but they can't understand the entire thing. So it's on you to make the decision for yourself. Advice though we can get from everybody. I mean, honestly, obviously I go, if it's like a practical question, go on Reddit, I throw it out there. It used to be Quora, or before that was Google Groups, and before that it was, I forget even what before Google Groups it was called, but it's been a while. So, so there's plenty of opportunities for like, specific advice. And then, so I guess that's kind of who I go to. But honestly, I go to my kids for advice. I learn stuff from my kids. I learn from everybody. That's the goal, is to, get as many perspectives as possible to help you make a good decision. I go to my parents. I go to my sisters. I mean, just anybody that's willing to talk to me, I think is a good source of advice. Okay. What's the best mindset for everyday life? What's the best mindset for everyday life? Gratefulness, awe, curiosity. I'll explain all those. So I would say curiosity is, just something that allows you not to get too stuck in the world, because as you're curious, you realize that everything's constantly changing. And gratefulness just allows you to kind of touch back. And allows me to, that's kind of what, just to kind of really feel connected to everything. So, and I don't want to use the word happy because I think it's too broad of a term and doesn't even mean anything. It's because it's so broad. So, but I would say just approaching life with curiosity and gratefulness, are the two things that I try to apply to my life, and seems to keep me walking forward positively throughout life. Got some nice comments here. It's awesome you do this. Keep up the good work, Dad. My pleasure. And and like I've said before, I love this. This is really fulfilling for me, and it's a real opportunity for me to connect with other people in the real world, and it's meaningful to me that somebody wants to hear advice from me. So you guys are giving to me as much as I'm giving to you, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. So we got here. Is it okay to be annoyed at your parents for circumcising you? Sure. You can be annoyed at your parents for anything you want to be annoyed at your parents for. That's, we get to be annoyed. We get that option, that's the power we have. Annoyed's an interesting word. Angry. Are you angry? Are you hurt? Annoyed to me is my, sometimes someone annoys me. They keep poking me or something. I'm like, don't stop poking me. I'm going to change the word to angry. You can tell me if that's not what you meant, but, I think that, there's a lot of, things you can think about of why you're angry about it, and then see if you can find a way just to accept that they made the best decision, that they could at the time. And it's kind of water under the bridge. So, and you can maybe forgive them for that. Finding forgiveness, I think, is a big thing. Finding forgiveness for our parents and to ourselves, to our friends, I think carries us far in life. All right. So what else we got here? Up for a chat about social expectations and benchmarks. Sure. Absolutely. I don't know what benchmarks are. I don't know what you mean by benchmarks, but social expectations, sure. I've lived my life trying to live up to social expectations. I can tell you it's a completely improper way to live life in my experience. Here's the problem with social expectations that I found is that they don't necessarily meet up to our personal needs. And then we end up throwing a lot of hate on ourselves for not meeting societal expectations when they're just made up. Society made them up. Nobody actually said they're important. And in fact, what's societally expected today may be absolutely the opposite in 100 years, and likely was the opposite 100 years ago. So to me, what that says is that, it's just a way that we control each other, right, and create order. But we have to step outside of that. We have to step outside of the social norms to find ourselves, in order to find our own happiness and our own path. So, and there's so many social expectations. And I think we do as we, if we want to be aware, we have to challenge them as they come to us so we can say, is this something that's helpful for me to find happiness in life or not? And if it's not, then you basically ignore that social expectation and you do your own thing. And, frankly, it kind of sucks that, as a society, we're not more flexible in letting people live their own life, right? That's the ultimate freedom we can do, is that we can accept that every single person on this earth is living a completely separate life and should have the opportunity to do with it whatever they want, right? Now, if it impacts me, we can have a different discussion, right? If it impacts other people. But if it's not, let them do what they want. Like, why should we judge? Like, really, right? But societally, we've decided that's how we do things, and it's pervasive. And, So just having that awareness that you don't have to do the socially acceptable thing, you can find some freedom in that. And it's not easy to kind of go against societal norms, right? It's like, try wearing a pair of underwear on your head, right? It's not hurting anybody, right? It's not, but it's societally, it's just kind of like everyone be looking at you funny, must be a crazy guy, even though you might be doing it just to prove that you're brave enough to wear underwear on your head, right? So, so to me, that's the main thing about social expectations that can come from your parents, right? So from a young age, our parents are telling us what they expect from us, which is really our parents are just reflecting society's expectations, the society they grew up in, the society their parents grew up in, so I think the main thing to bring to it is that there's this awareness that there are societal expectations out there, and you can choose not to follow them. And you also understand their consequences, perhaps, to wearing underwear on your head if you go to a party, right? The people might kind of look at you weird, but you're cool with that because you're an individual that's strong enough, to be yourself. All right, let's see what else we got here. Just scrolling through here. Am I a dad offering to be a dad to Reddit? Well, I can't take the responsibility of being, Reddit's dad. That'd be rather hubris of me. But anybody that wants someone to connect with, for this, in this manner, I'm always happy to be here, as long as there are people that are interested in chatting about things. But being a dad comes with a lot of responsibility. And I don't know that I could take on that responsibility, if I'm honest. Okay, dadvice. That wasn't mine. That was not my dad joke, actually. I'm actually very poor at dad jokes. In fact, I'll do a quick... This is like my favorite joke, but it's a knock-knock joke, and I was thinking, I can do it, so I'm going to do it with you, and you just got to answer. It's a knock-knock joke. We all know how knock-knock jokes work, right? Knock-knock, interrupting cow, moo. Right, that's my favorite dad joke. So, someone gave me the dadvice in the comments the other day, and it stuck. And so I'm going to go with that. I'll try to give some dadvice. I like it. It's good. Should I be trying to reproduce even though I don't want to have a kid? So, and I assume you mean like trying to reproduce doesn't mean like, should I be having sex if I don't want to have a kid, right? Not connected. But, if you don't want it, so the question is, right, so, you're in a relationship and you're like, well, let's have a kid, your significant other saying, let's have a kid, and you're like going down that path, but you're thinking to yourself, this is what I'm imagining, well, I don't really want to have a kid. So, no, the answer is no. If you don't want to have a kid, then I don't think it's a smart thing to have a kid. For another person. You have to have a kid for yourself, because you want to have a kid. I don't think it's really fair to yourself or to the kid to have someone that you don't want. Now, if you're ambivalent about it, you're like, I don't know, I'm scared, that's a whole different discussion. But if you really don't want them, I think that would be unfair to both you, your significant other, to the kid, and I think you should have conversation around that and bring it up. See what else we got here. What do I think about the current protests going on around U.S.? And I'm just going to say let's take an opportunity to think about not thinking about the protests a little bit and bringing that energy into your life of really just seeing the positive that's going on in the world right now, even though it might be hard, or you can see the positives of the protests, but not just watching the protests, but really just focusing on the good that's in your life and not letting the world be the world a little bit, maybe taking some action in terms of knocking on some neighbors' doors if you want to encourage voting to create change. But really, bring it inside, make it about you and finding your own happiness, taking this opportunity of this quiet, which, by the way, will probably be the only time in your life you're going to have quiet like you've had in the last couple months. I would throw that out there. And this is some real dad advice, is that, the quietness that we've had in the world is something that I've never had in my lifetime. And really leaning into it before it's over, because once it's over, it's going to go back to the crazy life that we knew before. So, keep that in mind a little bit. Let's see what else we got here. Any advice on how to get over the loss of my granddad? I'm really sorry to hear that you lost your granddad. I lost my grandmother recently. She was 104. And, it made me sad. I think, losses like that take time. There's no other way. A friend of mine once said, time takes time. And that would be a mantra I'd take into life for, hard things that happen to us in life. Remember the good things and about your granddad, and give yourself the space to mourn, cry, really cry when you feel it. Any emotion you feel, you got to own, or else, you get like emotional diet, like constipation. So really own it and, and just understand it's to take time, but the pain will pass. That's the nature of everything in this world, is that it passes, including pain, thankfully. Dad, I have zero motivation and drive lately. Advice on how to change that? Well, the first, question you have to kind of rule out is, are you depressed, right? And understanding if you're depressed or not, right? Because that's a whole different game. And I understand zero motivation and drive. I think it's about finding something that you can be passionate about, assuming it's not just a depressive, right? And the other thing to keep in mind is sometimes it's okay to have zero motivation and drive, right? So if your whole life you've been highly motivated and highly driven, and you come to a point of like zero motivation and drive, roll with it a little bit, right? Maybe your body's just saying, hey, this is what I need for a little while. So give it a break, right? We don't, right? Society tells us we have to be motivated. Let's even take a step there. And this is a hard conversation because, at the end of the day, if we're not motivated, then things don't happen, right? But I think recognizing it for what it is, which is motivation and drive are societal drives, can be kind of helpful, because, there are all these things that are societal that, like we talked about, might not map up to us, right? You might be a person that's perfectly happy, and living in a tent in a national park full time and just chilling, right? And if so, you don't need a lot of money to do that, maybe. And depending what national park you're at, and you can make things work with less, and you don't need to always be motivated. So, but to me, it sounds like you're a person that probably already had motivation and drive, assuming in this case you wouldn't have just having some depression going on, and and then it's just about allow that to be, just allow things to be, and then obviously if you do feel that you're depressed, right, it's less, there's more, that there's a heaviness that's over you. That's something you should go get some help with a therapist. All right, let's see what we got here. We got a minute left, so let's see what else we got for the last discussion. And thank you for the the kind words along the way here, guys. Appreciate that. Well, you know what? There's not really enough time to do anything else. So, in the last 40 seconds here, if I've brought value to your day, if you don't mind just saying thank you in the comments, I would appreciate that. And I hope that you can truly feel throughout today and until we meet again, your own natural beauty, because you're beautiful. And maybe tomorrow, or we could talk a little bit about what that really means. but I do want you to kind of, fully recognize, that you are beautiful and that you're whole and that you can do anything you want in this world. So, thank you. And until next time, let's see if I have time tomorrow. I can see what's on the agenda. Yes, it looks like tomorrow works. So I'll show up again here tomorrow at 5 and we can do it again. So until then, I hope all is well with everybody. Cheers.